There's a moment that comes for all of us. A moment when the ground beneath your feet disappears. When everything you built, everything you believed in, everything you thought was solid, crumbles. And in that moment, you have a choice. You can let the collapse destroy you, or you can discover what Marcus Aurelius knew 2,000 years ago, that the storm outside can never touch what's eternal within. Right now, somewhere in your life, something is falling apart. Maybe it's a relationship that's dissolving. Maybe it's a career that's crumbling. Maybe it's just the person you thought you were, slowly disintegrating in front of your eyes. And you're standing there, watching it all come undone, wondering how to keep going. Wondering if you even can. Marcus Aurelius understood this moment, not as a philosopher sitting comfortably in his study, but as a man who watched his empire burn, his children die, his body fail him. He ruled Rome during plague, war, and betrayal. Everything around him was chaos, yet he remained unshaken. Not because nothing hurt him, but because he discovered something most people never find. A rule so ancient, so powerful, that it turns collapse into clarity, suffering into strength, chaos into unshakable peace. Today, you're going to learn that rule, and by the end of this video, when everything in your world feels like it's falling apart, you'll finally understand how to stand still in the storm. Before we begin this journey together, I want to ask you something. If this video finds you in a moment of struggle, if these words resonate with something you're carrying, take a moment to subscribe, leave a like, comment below, and tell me what you're facing right now. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, because wisdom this ancient deserves to be passed forward, and your engagement helps these ideas reach the people who need them most. Now, let's step into the world of Marcus Aurelius. Let's discover what he knew that most of us have forgotten. You wake up one morning and the text message is there. The relationship is over. Or you walk into work and the meeting is already scheduled. The job is gone. Or you look in the mirror and you don't recognize yourself anymore. The person you thought you were has vanished. This is the human condition. We build our lives like houses of cards, intricate and beautiful, balanced perfectly, until the wind comes. And it always comes. The wind of change, of loss, of entropy. And when it does, we feel something primal rise up inside us. Panic. Fear. The desperate need to grab onto something, anything, to stop the collapse. But here's what Marcus Aurelius knew that you need to understand right now. The collapse isn't your enemy. Your resistance to it is. Let me tell you about a man who lived 1,700 years ago. His name was Marcus Aurelius, and he was the most powerful person in the known world. Emperor of Rome, commander of armies, holder of absolute authority. If anyone could control his circumstances, it was him. But his reign began with the Antonine Plague, a pandemic that killed millions. His northern borders were constantly under attack. His co-emperor and adopted brother betrayed him. His wife may have been unfaithful. His children died one after another, until only one son remained, a son who would become one of history's worst tyrants. Marcus Aurelius watched everything fall apart, not just around him, but through him. He couldn't stop the plague. He couldn't prevent the invasions. He couldn't save his children. He couldn't even ensure his legacy would continue with wisdom and virtue. By every measure, his life was a catalogue of loss. Yet he wrote these words in his private journal: "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Think about that for a moment. The most powerful man in the world, admitting he had no power over the world, only over his response to it. This is where most of us get it wrong. We think strength means control. We think being steadfast means preventing the collapse. We exhaust ourselves trying to hold everything together with white knuckles and desperate prayers. But Marcus Aurelius understood something deeper, something that changes everything when you truly grasp it. Steadfastness isn't about stopping the storm. It's about becoming the mountain that watches the storm pass. Right now, you're probably fighting something. You're pushing against reality, arguing with what is, trying to force the world to be different than it is. And every moment you do that, you suffer, not because of what's happening to you, but because you're at war with what's happening to you. Marcus Aurelius faced this same war. Every morning he would remind himself, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. He knew his day would be difficult. He knew people would disappoint him. He knew circumstances would challenge him. But he didn't wake up hoping they wouldn't. He woke up preparing to remain steadfast when they did. This is the first truth. Everything falls apart. Not sometimes. Always. Eventually. Inevitably. Your relationships will change. Your health will decline. Your achievements will fade. Your certainties will crumble. This isn't pessimism. This is physics. This is entropy. This is the fundamental nature of existence in a physical world. Nothing material lasts. Nothing external remains. Everything you can see, touch, or hold will eventually dissolve. But here's the liberation in that truth. If everything external is temporary, then your peace cannot depend on external things remaining stable. It must come from somewhere else entirely. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The universe is change, life is opinion." He understood that the events themselves aren't the problem. Your interpretation of them is. Your story about them is. Your desperate need for them to be different is. When everything is falling apart around you, you have two options. You can fall apart with it, identifying so completely with your circumstances that their collapse becomes your collapse. Or you can recognize that you are not your circumstances. You are the awareness observing them. You are the consciousness experiencing them. And that consciousness, that essential you, cannot be destroyed by anything happening in the external world. This is what it means to remain steadfast. Not to prevent change, not to avoid pain, but to recognize that beneath the chaos, beneath the collapse, beneath the storm, there is something in you that cannot be touched, something eternal, something unshakable. And the rule Marcus Aurelius discovered for accessing that steadfastness? It's simpler than you think, but we need to go deeper to understand it. Let me show you what happens in your mind when things fall apart, because once you understand the mechanism, you can interrupt it. Imagine you're walking through your life on a path. You know this path. You've walked it for years. It's familiar, comfortable, predictable. Then suddenly the ground opens up beneath your feet. A chasm appears, and you're falling. In that moment of free fall, your brain does something automatic. It floods your system with stress hormones. Your amygdala, the ancient part of your brain responsible for survival, screams danger. Your thoughts race. Your heart pounds. Your body prepares for impact. And your mind begins generating stories at lightning speed. This is terrible. This shouldn't be happening. I can't handle this. Everything is ruined. I'll never recover. I'm falling apart. This is the catastrophic cascade, and it happens to everyone. It happened to Marcus Aurelius too. He was human. He felt fear. He experienced loss. He knew pain. But here's where he diverged from most people. He learned to observe the cascade without being swept away by it. He wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Let's break down what's actually happening psychologically when your world collapses. There are three distinct layers, and most people confuse them as one overwhelming experience. The first layer is the event itself. The breakup, the job loss, the diagnosis, the betrayal. This is pure fact. It happened. It's real. It exists in the world of circumstances. The second layer is your immediate physical and emotional response. The fear, the sadness, the anger, the shock. This is your body and nervous system reacting to threat or loss. It's natural. It's human. It's not something to be ashamed of or suppress. The third layer, and this is the critical one, is the story you tell yourself about the event and your response. This is where suffering multiplies. This is where a painful moment becomes an unbearable identity. You take the event and you weave it into a narrative. This happened because I'm not good enough. This proves I'm unlovable. This means I'll always fail. This shows the universe is against me. This confirms my worst fears about myself. Marcus Aurelius understood that the first layer is outside your control. Things happen. The world is what it is. The second layer is partially outside your control. You can't immediately stop your body's stress response or eliminate your emotional reactions. They're hardwired into your biology. But the third layer, the story, that's completely within your power. And that's where the ancient rule lives. He called it objective representation. It's the practice of seeing things as they are, not as your fearful mind imagines them to be. When something collapses, instead of immediately jumping to catastrophic interpretation, you pause. You observe. You describe the situation to yourself in purely factual terms, stripped of judgment, narrative, or emotional elaboration. Let me give you an example. Imagine you lose your job. Your initial thoughts might spiral. I'm a failure. I'll never find another job. I'm going to lose everything. People will judge me. I'm worthless. My life is over. Marcus Aurelius would interrupt that spiral with objective representation. I held a position. That position has ended. I am alive. I have capabilities. New situations will arise. Nothing about my essential nature has changed. Do you see the difference? Same event. Completely different internal experience. This isn't positive thinking. This isn't pretending everything is fine. It's radical honesty. It's seeing reality without the distorting filter of your frightened ego. Think of your mind like a still pond. When everything is calm, the pond perfectly reflects reality. You see the sky, the trees, the world as it truly is. But when something disturbs the water, when everything starts falling apart, the surface ripples. The reflection distorts. Now you're not seeing reality anymore. You're seeing a warped, fragmented version of reality, shaped by the turbulence in your own mind. Most people try to fix the reflection. They try to change what they see on the disturbed surface. But Marcus Aurelius understood you don't fix the reflection. You calm the water. You still the mind. And when the mind is still, reality appears as it truly is, neutral, manageable, workable. He wrote in his meditations, "Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth." He was describing the fundamental insight of cognitive psychology, 2,000 years before psychology existed as a science. Your experience of reality isn't reality. It's your mind's interpretation of reality. And when you're in crisis, your mind is the least reliable interpreter you have. So here's the psychological truth underneath the philosophical wisdom. When everything falls apart, what's actually falling apart? Not the external world. The external world is just changing as it always does. What's falling apart is your mental model of how things should be. Your expectations, your assumptions, your carefully constructed story about how your life was supposed to go. And the pain you feel isn't from the change itself. It's from the gap between your expectations and reality. The wider that gap, the more intense your suffering. Marcus Aurelius learned to close that gap not by changing reality, but by releasing his grip on expectation. He wrote, "Accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny, for what could more aptly fit your needs." This is radical acceptance, not passive resignation, but the recognition that reality is what it is, and your resistance to it only creates suffering without changing anything. When you understand this at a deep level, something shifts. You stop fighting the collapse. You stop seeing it as an enemy. Instead, you recognize it as a teacher, an invitation, a doorway to something you couldn't access while everything seemed stable. Because here's the paradox. The moments when everything falls apart are the moments when you finally discover what cannot fall apart. The moments when you lose everything are the moments when you find what cannot be lost. Now we arrive at the transformation. Because knowing the theory isn't enough. You need to understand how this actually works inside you. How you take this ancient wisdom and make it the operating system of your consciousness when chaos comes. Marcus Aurelius didn't just philosophize about steadfastness. He practiced it daily in conditions that would break most people. And he developed a specific internal technology for maintaining his center when everything around him was spinning out of control. Let's learn that technology now. The first practice is what he called view from above. When you're in the middle of collapse, your entire world shrinks to the crisis. It becomes all-consuming. All you can see is the problem. All you can feel is the pain. Your entire identity contracts around the wound. Marcus Aurelius would intentionally expand his perspective. He would imagine himself rising above his circumstances, looking down at himself from a great height, then rising further, seeing his city, his empire, his continent, his planet. And from that vantage point, his crisis would be revealed for what it truly was. A small, temporary disturbance in an infinite universe that has witnessed billions of such disturbances and will witness billions more. This isn't minimizing your pain, it's contextualizing it. It's remembering that you are part of something vastly larger than your immediate experience. And when you reconnect with that larger perspective, the crisis loses its power to define you. Try this right now. Whatever is falling apart in your life, imagine you're watching it from high above. See yourself in your current struggle as if you're watching a character in a story. From that distance, what do you notice? What becomes clear that wasn't clear when you were drowning in it? The second practice Marcus Aurelius used was negative visualization. This sounds counterintuitive, but it's profoundly powerful. Every morning he would spend time imagining everything going wrong. Not to torture himself, but to prepare himself. He would visualize loss, betrayal, pain, death. And then he would sit with those visualizations until he found peace with them. Why would he do this? Because when you've already mentally rehearsed the worst, when it actually happens, you're not shocked into paralysis. You're prepared. You're resilient. You've already done the emotional work. This is the opposite of toxic positivity, which tells you to only imagine good outcomes. Marcus Aurelius knew that life includes suffering. Loss is guaranteed. So instead of being traumatized when it arrives, he normalized it in advance. He made friends with impermanence. He developed a relationship with endings before they ended. You can do this too. Take the thing you're most afraid of losing right now, not to manifest it, but to rob it of its power to destroy you. Sit with the possibility of its loss. Feel the fear fully. Then ask yourself the Stoic question. If this happened, what would remain? And you'll discover that beneath everything you could lose, there's something that cannot be taken. That's what you're really looking for. That's what steadfastness is built on. The third practice is voluntary discomfort. Marcus Aurelius was an emperor, but he regularly chose austerity. He would sleep on the ground, fast, expose himself to cold. Not because he was masochistic, but because he was training his mind to be independent of external conditions. When you voluntarily experience discomfort, you teach yourself a crucial lesson. Comfort is not required for your well-being. Peace doesn't depend on circumstances being pleasant. Strength doesn't require everything to go smoothly, and when you've proven that to yourself in small ways, you have access to that truth in the big collapses. You don't need to become an ascetic, but you can practice small voluntary difficulties. Take the cold shower. Skip the meal. Sit with boredom instead of reaching for your phone. Do the hard conversation instead of avoiding it. Each small practice builds the muscle of steadfastness. The fourth practice, and perhaps the most important, is what Marcus Aurelius called the inner citadel. He wrote, "Dig within. Within is the wellspring of good, and it is always ready to bubble up, if you just dig." The inner citadel is the part of you that cannot be invaded by circumstances. It's your essential nature, your consciousness, your core self. Everything external is the outer territory, subject to attack, constantly changing, vulnerable to loss. But the inner citadel, when properly fortified, is impregnable. How do you fortify it? by consistently returning your attention to it, by reminding yourself, especially in crisis, that you are not your circumstances, you are not your thoughts, you are not your emotions. You are the awareness within which all of those things appear, and that awareness has never been damaged by anything that's happened to you. Think about every crisis you've survived, every heartbreak, every failure, every moment you thought would destroy you. Did it destroy the awareness that's reading these words right now? Did it eliminate your consciousness? No, it may have hurt, it may have changed you, but the core of who you are remained untouched. That's your inner citadel. And when you learn to rest in that place, when you learn to identify with consciousness rather than circumstances, you become truly steadfast. Not because nothing affects you, but because nothing defines you. Marcus Aurelius practiced accessing this place daily, in the morning before the chaos began, in the evening after the battles ended, in quiet moments between meetings. He would close his eyes, feel his breath, and return to the inner citadel. He would remind himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. And here's what's beautiful about this practice. The more you do it, the more automatic it becomes. Your mind learns that there's a place of safety that doesn't depend on external safety, a place of peace that doesn't depend on external peace, a place of strength that doesn't depend on external validation. This is the transformation Marcus Aurelius offers you. Not a life free from collapse, but a self that remains whole during collapse. Not a world without storms, but an inner landscape that can't be flooded by any storm. When you internalize these practices, when they become part of your automatic response to crisis, something miraculous happens. You stop fearing the fall, because you've discovered you were never falling. You were always held by something deeper than your circumstances ever touched. Now I want to share with you the hidden teachings, the lessons Marcus Aurelius wrote that most people read but don't truly understand. Because these aren't just philosophical concepts, they're survival instructions for the soul. There's a passage in Meditations that most people skip over. It seems abstract, almost cold. But when you understand what Marcus Aurelius was really saying, it changes everything. He wrote, "Loss is nothing else but change, and change is nature's delight." Think about those words. Loss is nothing else but change. Not loss is like change. Not loss includes change. Loss is change. They're the same thing. When you lose something, all that's happened is that form has changed. The energy that composed that thing, that relationship, that version of yourself hasn't disappeared. It's transformed, rearranged, become something else. Marcus Aurelius watched his children die. If anyone had the right to rage against loss, it was him. But he discovered something that most people never find. That arguing with change is like arguing with gravity. It's the fundamental law of physical existence. Everything that has form will change form. Everyone alive will die. Every relationship will end or transform. Every achievement will fade into history. This isn't nihilism. This is liberation. Because if change is inevitable, then your peace cannot be based on things remaining unchanged. It must be based on your relationship with change itself. He wrote another line that seems simple but contains multitudes. Confine yourself to the present. Not confine yourself in the present, but to the present. This is crucial. Most of your suffering doesn't exist in this present moment. It exists in your mental time travel. You suffer by reliving the past, replaying what went wrong, reconstructing your failures. Or you suffer by catastrophizing about the future, imagining disasters that haven't happened and probably never will. But right now, in this actual present moment, what's wrong? Not in your thoughts about this moment, in this moment itself. You're breathing. Your heart is beating. You have consciousness. Whatever has collapsed has already collapsed. Whatever will collapse hasn't happened yet. Right now there's just this. And usually this is manageable. Marcus Aurelius knew that the present moment is always smaller than your idea of it. When you strip away the mental narrative, when you come back to pure sensory experience, what's here right now, the crisis shrinks. It becomes something you can work with instead of something drowning you. This is why meditation is so powerful during collapse. Not because it makes problems disappear, but because it trains you to distinguish between what's actually happening and your mental elaboration of what's happening. And usually what's actually happening is far more manageable than your mind's version of it. But here's the deepest teaching, the one that's truly hidden in Marcus Aurelius's work. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Most people read that and think he's talking about overcoming obstacles, using setbacks as motivation. But he's saying something far more radical. He's saying the obstacle itself is the path, not an obstacle on your path. The obstacle is your path. When everything falls apart, you think you've been thrown off course. You think this is a detour, a mistake, something that shouldn't have happened. But Marcus Aurelius is telling you, this is the course. This collapse is exactly where you're supposed to be, not because some cosmic force planned it, but because it's what's real. And the only path that exists is the one through what's real. Think about the most transformative moments of your life, the moments when you really grew, when you really changed, when you discovered depths you didn't know you had. Were those moments of comfort and stability? Or were they moments of collapse, crisis, and challenge? You don't discover your strength when everything is easy. You discover it when you have to carry weight you didn't think you could bear. You don't discover your resilience in good times. You discover it when you're broken and you somehow find the will to continue. You don't discover your essential nature when you're distracted by success. You discover it when everything external is stripped away and only essence remains. Marcus Aurelius lost almost everything: his health, his children, his peace, his hopes for his empire's future. But in losing all of that, he found something that made him one of the most influential philosophers in human history. He found the indestructible core, the thing that couldn't be lost. And he wrote it down so that 2,000 years later you could find it too. He also taught something that sounds contradictory at first. Be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved and the raging of the sea falls still around it. But he also wrote, the universe is change. Life is opinion. How can you be unmoved when everything is change? Here's the secret. You don't remain unmoved by becoming rigid. Rigidity breaks when pressure is applied. You remain unmoved by becoming deeply rooted while staying flexible. The rock isn't unchanged by the waves. It's slowly shaped by them, but it doesn't break. It doesn't fight. It simply allows the water to do what water does while maintaining its essential nature as rock. You are that rock. Life will crash against you. Loss will wear at you. Change will reshape your surface. But your essential nature, your consciousness, your core self, remains. Not because you defend it, but because it's the one thing that needs no defense. It was never in danger in the first place. Marcus Aurelius also understood something about impermanence that most people miss. He wrote, "Remember that all is opinion." At first this seems relativistic, like he's saying nothing is real, but he's not. He's saying your suffering isn't caused by what's real. It's caused by your opinion about what's real, your judgment of it, your interpretation of it, your story about it. The event is neutral. Your breakup, your job loss, your failure is neither good nor bad in itself. It simply is. You're the one who adds the judgment. And in adding that judgment, you create your suffering. This means your liberation isn't in changing the event. The event already happened or is happening. Your liberation is in recognizing you have the power to withdraw your judgments about the event, to see it as it is without the narrative, to experience the pain without the suffering. Pain is inevitable. It's part of being human. But suffering is the story you tell yourself about the pain. And that story is optional. That's what Marcus Aurelius discovered. That's the ancient rule he's offering you. When everything falls apart, you remain steadfast not by preventing the collapse, not by being strong enough to hold it all together, but by letting go of the story that the collapse means anything about your essential worth, your future possibilities, or your fundamental nature. The collapse is just change. Change is just life. Life is just the universe doing what the universe does. And you, at your core, are the awareness witnessing it all, unchanged by the changing, unmoved by the movement, steady in the midst of chaos, not because you're resisting chaos, but because you found the one place chaos cannot touch. Now let's bring this ancient wisdom into your actual life. Because knowing the philosophy is beautiful, but living it is what transforms you. So let me give you the practical framework for remaining steadfast when your world is falling apart right now, today, in the real circumstances you're facing. First, let me acknowledge where you probably are. You're not reading this in an ivory tower. You're reading this in the middle of something difficult. Maybe you're going through a divorce and every day feels like walking through broken glass. Maybe you lost your job and you're watching your savings dwindle while the rejections pile up. Maybe someone you love is sick and you feel helpless. Maybe you're just exhausted from holding yourself together and you don't know how much longer you can do it. Marcus Aurelius would say, start exactly where you are. Don't wait until you're calm. Don't wait until the crisis passes. Begin practicing steadfastness in the middle of the collapse. That's where the practice actually lives. So here's your daily framework, distilled from Marcus Aurelius's own practice. Morning ritual. Before you even get out of bed, before you check your phone, before you face the day's challenges, spend 3 minutes in what Marcus Aurelius called premeditation. He would tell himself, today I will encounter difficulty. People will disappoint me. Things will not go as planned, and I am prepared. You do the same. Sit on the edge of your bed. Take 3 deep breaths. Then say to yourself, either mentally or out loud, today will bring challenges. Some things will go wrong. I will feel uncomfortable emotions, and I am capable of meeting whatever comes. You're not manifesting problems. You're removing the shock factor. You're normalizing reality in advance. Then do the view from above exercise we discussed earlier. Imagine yourself zooming out from your body, seeing yourself in your room, then your building, then your city, then the planet, then the solar system. See your problems from that cosmic perspective for just 60 seconds. Not to make them seem meaningless, but to remember they're part of a much larger story. During the day, this is where most people lose their center. Something happens that triggers you. Someone says something, you get bad news. Your mind spirals. This is the crucial moment. This is where you practice what Marcus Aurelius practiced thousands of times. The instant you feel yourself beginning to spiral, to catastrophize, to fall apart internally, you pause. Literally stop whatever you're doing if possible. Take 1 deep breath. Then you do what Marcus Aurelius called objective representation. Describe the situation to yourself in purely factual terms. I received information. My body is reacting with stress hormones. My mind is creating catastrophic scenarios. These are automatic responses. They are not reality. Then describe what's actually true. I am breathing. I am conscious. I have faced difficult things before. I am capable of facing this. This might sound mechanical, but that's the point. Your emotional mind is chaos right now. You need your rational mind to interrupt the spiral. Marcus Aurelius did this constantly. In the middle of betrayals, in the middle of battles, in the middle of personal loss, he would stop and reframe. And each time he did it, he strengthened his steadfastness. Then comes the critical question Marcus Aurelius would ask himself. Is this within my control? If yes, identify 1 small action you can take right now and take it. If no, practice radical acceptance. This is outside my control. I release my resistance to it. I will focus on what I can influence, my response, my attitude, my next step. Most of what's falling apart in your life is outside your direct control. You can't control other people's choices. You can't reverse time. You can't force outcomes. But you can always control your response, and your response is where your power lives. Throughout the day, practice negative visualization in small doses. When something good is happening, when you're comfortable, when things are going well, take 30 seconds to imagine losing it. Not to torture yourself, but to appreciate it more fully now, and to prepare yourself emotionally for the inevitable changes ahead. Marcus Aurelius would look at his wife and children and remind himself they were mortal. Not to be morbid, but to love them more completely in the present and to be prepared when the inevitable loss came. Evening ritual. Before you sleep, Marcus Aurelius would review his day. Not to judge himself, but to learn. He would ask 3 questions, and you should ask them too. Where did I lose my center today? Be honest. Where did you react instead of respond? Where did you let circumstances dictate your internal state? Where did you forget your steadfastness? What could I have done differently? Not to shame yourself, but to prepare for next time. How could you have applied the principles differently? What would steadfastness have looked like in that moment? What am I grateful for? This is crucial. Marcus Aurelius, in the middle of unimaginable difficulty, would end his day with gratitude. For breath, for consciousness, for the opportunity to practice virtue, for one moment of beauty. Gratitude isn't about toxic positivity. It's about training your mind to notice what remains even as other things fall apart. Now let's talk about the specific situations you're probably facing. If you're dealing with relationship collapse, every day, practice seeing the other person as a separate consciousness on their own journey. They are not responsible for your peace. You are. Practice releasing the story that their choices mean anything about your worth. They're leaving, their choices, their feelings are about them and their path. Your steadfastness is about you and yours. Focus on what you can control, your healing, your growth, your next chapter. If you're dealing with financial or career collapse, each morning, separate your identity from your economic situation. You are not your job. You are not your bank account. You are consciousness experiencing a temporary financial state. Practice daily. I have faced challenges before. I have capabilities. New opportunities exist. I am more than my current circumstances. Then take one small action toward stability. Send one application. Make one phone call. Take one step. Steadfastness isn't passive. It's calm action in the midst of chaos. If you're dealing with health challenges, this is perhaps the hardest because it feels like your body, your very vessel, is failing you. Marcus Aurelius dealt with chronic illness his entire adult life. His practice was to separate his essential self from his physical condition. Each day, acknowledge the pain, but don't become the pain. My body is experiencing difficulty. I am the awareness witnessing my body experiencing difficulty. Then focus on what you can control, your treatment compliance, your mental state, your moments of peace between the pain. If you're dealing with grief and loss, this is the collapse that feels most like dying yourself. Marcus Aurelius buried most of his children. His practice was not to suppress grief but to grieve without losing himself in grief. Feel everything, cry, rage, suffer, but periodically come up for air. Remind yourself, I am grieving because I loved. The love was real. The loss is real. And I am still here. Some part of me continues. Life continues to flow through me. Let grief move through you without becoming your permanent identity. The universal practice for all of these situations is what Marcus Aurelius called the dichotomy of control. Make 2 lists right now. Actually write them down. List 1. Things I cannot control. Other people's choices. The past and outcomes. How long this will take. What others think of me. The ultimate future. List 2. Things I can control. My response to circumstances. My effort and action. My thoughts and interpretations. How I treat myself during difficulty. My values and who I choose to be. This present moment. Look at these lists. Really look at them. Where are you spending your energy? If you're spending emotional energy on list 1, you're creating suffering without creating change. Marcus Aurelius would redirect all of his energy to list 2, and that's where you find your power. One final practical tool. Create what I call a steadfastness anchor. This is a phrase, a memory, or an image that you can return to when you feel yourself losing center. Marcus Aurelius had several. One was, you have power over your mind. Another was visualizing his inner citadel. Another was remembering that he was part of the Logos, the universal reason. Create yours. Maybe it's a phrase, I am the mountain. This is just weather. Maybe it's a memory of a time you survived something you thought would destroy you. Maybe it's an image of a tree with deep roots bending in the wind but not breaking. When chaos comes, when you feel yourself falling apart, you immediately go to your anchor. You repeat it. You visualize it. You embody it. This is your emergency steadfastness practice. Marcus Aurelius didn't become steadfast by never facing collapse. He became steadfast by practicing these principles thousands of times, in thousands of small moments and several enormous ones, until they became his automatic response to difficulty. You can do the same. Starting today. Starting now. In whatever is falling apart in your life right now, I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine it's years from now. Whatever is falling apart in your life right now has long since resolved. Some things you saved, some things you lost, some things transformed into something you couldn't have predicted, and you're sitting somewhere quiet, maybe watching the sunset, maybe drinking coffee in the morning stillness. And someone younger than you, someone just beginning to face their own collapse, comes to you and asks, how did you survive? How did you get through it? And you realize something profound. You realize that the collapse, the thing you thought would destroy you, actually revealed you. It didn't break you. It broke away everything that wasn't actually you. All the false identities, all the fragile structures you built your life on, all the stories you told yourself about who you had to be. And what remained, what survived the collapse, was something far more real than anything you had before. Your essential nature, your consciousness, your capacity to endure and grow and continue, the part of you that Marcus Aurelius knew about 2,000 years ago, the part that can never actually be destroyed because it was never dependent on external circumstances in the first place. Right now, in the middle of your crisis, you can't see this yet. You're too close to the pain. You're too deep in the chaos. But I promise you, there will come a day when you look back at this moment and recognize it not as the end of your story, but as the chapter where you finally discovered what you're made of. Marcus Aurelius wrote these words from the depths of his own struggles. The art of living is more like wrestling than dancing. He knew that life isn't a graceful performance where everything flows smoothly. It's a contest. It's grappling with forces beyond your control. It's being thrown down and getting back up. It's holding your ground when everything is trying to move you. But here's what he also knew. Every time you get thrown down and choose to stand back up, every time you feel yourself breaking and choose to remain whole, every time the world falls apart and you remain centered, you're not just surviving. You're becoming someone new, someone stronger, someone more real. The person you were before the collapse couldn't have handled this, but the person you're becoming through the collapse can handle anything. You are discovering right now in the midst of your pain what Marcus Aurelius discovered in the midst of his, that there is something in you that cannot be touched by tragedy, something eternal, something unshakable. Not because it's hard or rigid, but because it's fundamental. It's the ground of being itself. It's consciousness. It's life itself flowing through you. And when everything external falls away, when all your structures collapse, when every certainty crumbles, that's what remains. That's what you're learning to identify with. That's the steadfastness Marcus Aurelius was pointing you toward. You don't remain steadfast by being strong enough to prevent the collapse. You remain steadfast by discovering you are larger than anything that can collapse, deeper than any pain, more fundamental than any circumstance. The storm is real. The pain is real. The loss is real. But so are you. And you're discovering that you're more real than any of it. Marcus Aurelius spent his life ruling an empire, fighting wars, dealing with plague and death and betrayal. And in the midst of all of that chaos, in the quiet moments between the battles, he would write in his journal, not for publication, not for posterity, just for himself. Reminders of what was true when everything else felt false. And one of the things he wrote was this: waste no more time arguing what a good person should be. Be one. The same is true for steadfastness. Don't waste your time wishing you were steadfast. Don't wait until you feel ready. Don't postpone your peace until circumstances improve. Be steadfast now, in this moment, in this chaos, with this pain, exactly as things are. You have everything you need. You always did. The collapse isn't happening to destroy you. It's happening to reveal you, to show you what you're actually made of, to prove to you that you're far more than the temporary circumstances of your life. Marcus Aurelius left you a rule 2,000 years ago, a rule for remaining steadfast when everything falls apart. And here it is in its simplest form. You are not your circumstances. You are the awareness observing your circumstances, and that awareness cannot be broken by anything happening in the external world. Remember that in the chaos. Return to it in the pain. Rest in it when everything else is falling apart. You are the mountain. This is just weather. And you've been standing long before this storm arrived. You'll be standing long after it passes. Thank you for being here, for listening, for doing this inner work. The world needs people who can remain centered in chaos, who can find peace in difficulty, who can be steady when everything else is unstable. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs it. Leave a comment and tell me what you're facing. Let me know how you're practicing steadfastness. We're all in this together, learning to stand in our own storms. Until next time, remember, the collapse isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of your transformation.